Stop. Don't buy that Pix package or all access. Wait, what? Yep. Don't click add to cart until you check out our new deals page at both WagerTalk and Sports Memo, where you can find all the latest offers, promotions, and coupons available all in one place. These deals are updated daily and can be found by clicking deals in the nav at WagerTalk or Sports Memo, going to wt.buzz/deals, or scanning the QR code on your screen.
Four.
Hello, guys. Nick Borrman here of WagerTalk.com, back with another episode of Tea Time from Vegas. 1 week post another major PGA Championship. This week we're talking Charles Schwab Challenge. With me, as always, my co-host Andy Lang, also of WagerTalk.com, to break it all down for you. Andy, welcome, my friends. How are you doing?
Doing pretty good. Looking forward to the Charles Schwab. Looking forward to put the PGA Championship in the rearview mirror. Me and Mito Pereira would like to forget about this tournament. Just going to be honest, not going to sugarcoat it. That I think was my worst tournament in 365 days. Nothing went right. It was just, and it culminated with some of the guys that you and I both bet on being stuck in that brutal wave of guys that just played against the hardest conditions. And so a couple bad reads and a couple little bit of unlucky plays, and it results in a bad weekend. So we did win at least one of them, thank God. It was just not a good week, and I was due for a bad one. I'll be honest. I was due for a stinker, and it just happened to be this week. But the good news about golf, there's always a tournament right around the corner. So looking forward to this one.
Yeah, it is true. And no matter how high or low you are 1 week, the next week usually is quick to right the ship one way or the other. So that I know it'll be a big bounce back week for you. Before we get into today's show, let's take care of a little business as always. We do have a promo code available for you guys for either Andy or myself's tournament pack for this week. Charles Schwab Challenge, but we're going with promo code Colonial20, as that's the one consistent thing this tournament has gone through several name changes over the years, but the course has always stayed true. So we're going to go Colonial20. Takes $20 off the tournament pack, normally priced at $39. Get it for just $19 this week. All plays for Andy or myself included for all 4 days of coverage. So however, WagerTalk.com to check that out. All right, Andy, let's get into a little bit then of our best bets and our worst bets from last week. I'm glad you do have at least one best bet. I've had a couple weeks so far on the show where I had no best bet, so at least you're better than me in that regard. I'll let you break it down first. What was your best bet and what was your worst bet from last week?
Well, here's how bad mine was. My best bet was a tie. That BetMGM, thank God, pays out on ties. So my best bet was Hideki Matsuyama, top Japanese. It was ridiculous. He was one Japanese player that made the cut, and then Hoshino makes a long birdie on 18 on Friday to make the cut by one. They're neck and neck all the way through the weekend, and finally they end up tying. And like I said, I mean, you want to bring up why it's important to have sports books that pay out on ties. That right there. If I was on a different sports book, that's a loser. But pay out on ties, so it's a winner. Worst bet was my first 5% of the year, and I go with Scotty Scheffler, top 20, and he not only does he not make the cut, I mean, he played like a sauced amateur. It was awful. It's his second missed cut in a year. He's won 4 out of his last 8 tournaments, and he misses the cut. I haven't missed one that bad. I don't think ever since I've been at WagerTalk. I mean, there's sometimes you play on guys and they miss the cut, but to have the world number 1 Masters champ, won 4 out of 8, to have him top 20 and have him not even sniff the cut was by far my worst bet, maybe of the year. How about you?
Sauced amateur. I love
sauced
that
amateur.
Well, I was also on Scotty. What's frustrating to me is he was the last person I kind of added before the tournament started because I avoided him at first, and then I'm like, I can't leave Scotty off, can I? Because I'll kick myself if he wins. So I threw him on there on an outright and a leaderboard bet. Yeah, of course, I feel the same same sentiment for you there. So my best bets collectively were I had 3 leaderboard bets, including a 5% play on Corey Connors to make top 40, which that's all he does. And he too missed the cut. Scheffler missed the cut. Lowry was a top 20 gave out on the show, and he finished tied for 24. So at least that one was close, but he couldn't just get anything going. My best bet, thankfully, saved the week, and that was JT to cash it and win it outright. So
Yay!
lucky as hell. I'll admit it. I mean, he was 7 shots back going in. I didn't think he had much of a chance. And honestly, I thought he blew his chance. He had a 8-footer on, it was either 14 or 15, missed that. And then he had a 10-footer there on 18 to post 6. And I'm thinking with neither one of those going in, if both of those go in, I think he's really got a good chance. If one of those goes in, I think he's got a solid chance. But when he missed both and he posts that, I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if Mito's going to collapse. But boy, do I feel bad for Mito to not only, miss out or, lose the tournament, but then miss out on the playoff by making double. That's just salt in the wound. But he handled it like a champ, man. If everybody can step up and do a post tournament conference, whatever you want to call it, interview like that, that's pretty impressive for that young man. So hopefully he bounces back sometime soon. I don't think it's going to be this week, but we'll get into that later. But JT, thankfully, 2 for 2 on the majors. Hopefully we can come back again for the U.S. Open next. All right, let's get into this week. As always, let's start with the top 10 strokes gained graphic coming in. JT was, of course, in that graphic last week, so that's 12 of 20 weeks so far in 2022 that the winner has come from inside of this graphic. So let's take a look here and see if we can find another one. Of course, we have world number 1 Scotty Scheffler back in the mix this week, as well as JT, which I am surprised about. Willie Z, Victor Hovland, Homa, Varner, Burns, Sungjae, Horschel, and Morikawa round out the top 10. So pretty strong field, which is typical here because it is a pretty it's an old school course. It's a great course that the guys love, so it usually has a decent field. But I am surprised that JT and even Willie Z, for the battle that they went through, are in the field this week. Notables, I added Mito just because we know what happened to him last week, so I want to show him there. He has decent numbers coming into this week. Jason Kokrak is the defending champion, so I figured it was worth putting his numbers there. And Jordan Spieth, number 9 in the world, and he was on everybody's radar last week. I know a lot of people put money on him, but he was never in the thick of it. He did make the cut, played all 4 days, but really I don't think he was talked about much at all over the course of that tournament. So there's your top 10 coming into this week. Andy, let's get into the course and field a little bit. As always, I like to let you go first. What do you want to have the viewers know about either the course or the field this week?
Well, first off, I'd like to point out something that really flies under the radar that is giving us more opportunities with these tournaments with a lot more high-ranking players, bigger names and everything. And that's when the PGA a couple years ago put in that rule that you need to play a certain amount of tournaments, and you also need to play. You also need to play different tournaments. Like you need to play a couple tournaments that you didn't play the year before. And I mean, Nick, surely you remember this. Like 5 or 6 years ago, after the Masters, there would just be this lull where you would go 3-4 tournaments in a row without seeing a decent field. It was terrible. I mean, we remember the Steve Stricker Shell Open, where he would go out there and shoot 29 under without the scent of a high ranking golfer. So I do think that rule, as much as we bang on the PGA sometimes, that rule has made it fields a lot. That's why we're seeing it. So as far as this course, it's a big rule. Nobody talks about it. This course, pretty tight fairways, and they're tree lined. That's going to be the biggest defense. We're not going to have too much wind, I don't believe, until the weekend. So obviously when we're down there in the Texas, Oklahoma area, you got to always worry about wind, but it doesn't look like it's going to be too big of an it's a par 70. And for me this week, some of the stats that I'll be looking at are off the tee. I think you need to really be accurate off the tee, and this is not a course that can be overpowered. You can overpower it, but it's not a prerequisite. We see guys that are pretty short off the tee have a lot of success there. It's going to be about approaches. So I'm going to be looking at, obviously putting is going to be, every tournament, but approach and off the tee is going to be the 2 key stats that I look for with some of the golfers. But it's a beautiful course. It's really cool. The players really like it. It's a lot very respectable, and the par 5s are also not terribly easy. I think some guys could do well on them, but these are not the your 510-yard straight down the driver 8-iron into a par 5. So don't look for a huge par 5 scoring week. Just look for who's really good on the par 4s, who keeps it in the fairway, and who can hit the greens. So that's my take on the course.
Yeah, Colonial is a definitely one of the player favorites, and it does get a decent turnout every week. I'm glad you brought up the fact that the PGA did change that rule, because I know it, but I forget it often. And it certainly has made these fields better. I think they have to play. I don't know about every tournament, but it's supposed to be like one every 3 years or something.
It's I think they need 25. Well, you remember, we would never have a good field after a major ever.
No, of course. Especially with now the Memorial coming next week too, so everybody's going to be there for that. So but listen, this course draws a lot of comparison to last week's Southern Hills. In fact, it was designed by the very same Perry Maxwell. Jordan Spieth said last week, it being Southern Hills reminds me a lot of Colonial, just a little bit on steroids, a little more undulation, and driver in your hands more, which is pretty fair comparison considering Colonial, like you said, is another par 70. It's about 300 yards shorter than last week at Southern Hills, but I mean, it's going to play very, very similar. I mean, it's about precision around this course, not power. You got very, very fast greens, similar size to last week. Last year, Colonial ranked inside the 3 hardest courses in both fairways hit and greens in regulation. Just shows you how much of a premium it is to be able to get the ball in play. The last 4 winners have averaged somewhere in the mid-teens under par, but this year I think could prove a little bit more difficult. You mentioned the wind, which is coming on the weekend. Could be blustery gusts up to 30 miles an hour on Saturday and Sunday. Could start as early as Friday afternoon, but it seems like it's going to kind of be later and probably not affect the draw too much on Thursday, Friday, but it definitely will be a factor come the weekend. So they could post some numbers over the first 2 days, and then maybe just try to hang on as those wins pick up over the weekend. Overall field of 120, very strong. 11 of the top 25 here, including 6 of the top 10. However, this place is all about experience. I mean, you have to have the reps at Colonial to know how to win here. It's pretty cool stats that over the last 19 tournaments here, the average age of the winner is 36, and the average number of starts that they've had before they won was 6. And last year, oh, wow. Kokrak won in his 7th start a week after his 36th birthday, so he just added right to the mean there. And the last first-time winner here was Sergio Garcia, 2001. So this course does pay off to have a lot of experience. Do at least pay attention to that this week. You got a lot of young players in the field, of course, and a lot of the best players in the world right now are the young guys, but most of them probably only have 2, 3, 4 starts here. So take that for what it's worth, but it is worth noting because it's a trend that has proven true over the last 2 decades. So, all right, Andy, let's get into our bets for the week.
We're going to guess the round. We're going to guess the round.
All right. Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that. Let's. We want to talk about the winning score, right? A little play. Me versus you. Who's gonna showcase the winning score a little bit here? I don't know. How do you want to do this? You want to? I guess is there an advantage to who says it first versus who goes second? Is it like Price is Right rules where I can just go, one under and just undercut whatever you say?
No, so we're gonna guess the winning score and whoever's closest. No, this isn't Price is Right. Just whoever's closest. I will give you the honors this week since you picked the outright winner. So you get to pick first. What do you think the winning score is going to be this week?
Last year was 15. I think it might play a little tougher with the wind. So I'm going to go 13. I'm going to go 13 under par will win this tournament.
I think there's going to be someone that has a hellacious Thursday and Friday. I think they get to probably 10 or 11 and then a couple shots under par on the weekend, a hot putter and some good irons. I'm going to go 16 under. I think someone goes low.
Okay. All right. 13 under. Hang on. 13, 16. All right. We'll have our win-loss record posted for next week's show. Good luck to you there. Either way, I hope it's one of the next couple guys that we talk about, and I will mention first. The one thing I do want to note, I don't know if you're using this as I don't know if it's my full strategy, but it's definitely part of what I'm doing this week, is anybody that was really in the grind last week, JT, Willie Z, Mito, I'm not playing them this week. It's a lot to ask to stay up after a tough tournament like it was last week. So you can talk about that here when you go, but I will mention that because it kind of segues right into my very, very first pick, which is Sung Jae Im, 35-1 right now on the outright. So if you're going to use that tactic, there's probably nobody better to look at than Sung Jae Im because he didn't even play last week, which is surprising, but it was because he had COVID. So, but everything I've read and found so far is that it was a very minor bout, so he doesn't really have any lingering issues, or I'm not, don't have any really stamina issues to worry about this week. And he could be coming in here fresher because he didn't have to deal with that PGA Championship last week. Betting markets are also very reactive from the previous week's results. So I like his number, which I feel is a little longer than it otherwise would have been had he been in contention or in the tournament at all, for that matter, last week. The only knock on Sung Jae, I go back to the history of the course here, the age, is that this is just his fourth start, and he's only 24 years old, so he doesn't quite fit that average age and experience number here. But he did finish tied for 10th here in 2020. He's very accurate, which is important. We talked about that, ranking 40th in driving accuracy and number 6 in greens and regulation, which leads to 14th in total strokes gained this season. He's missed just 2 cuts in 16 starts, and he has 10 top 25 finishes. So as always with my outrights, I say it every week, I just want a guy that is going to be around on the weekend and have a chance come Sunday. So I think Sung Jae will put me in position that week. 35-1, I think, is a pretty good number. So, Andy, let's go to you. Just as important as to know who to bet on, who not to bet on. So who are your guys that you're going to be avoiding this week?
Well, I want to also give a shout out to Sung Jae Im. I started with April 1st. I just wanted to get a real short sample size. And number 1 strokes gained off the tee since April 1st, Sung Jae Im. So I
didn't even know that. Makes me feel even better.
So I think that stat is really important. I like looking at a shorter range of who's been, what guys been doing. Like I don't care what you did in the fall. doesn't really bother me. Doesn't really affect me. So Sung Jae Im's good. All right, guys, that can trip you up. I think I did pretty dang good last week. I talked about Cam Smith. He finished outside the top 10. Hovland was his typical major Hovland, never a threat.
Don't remind me about Cantley.
And then Cantley was just awful. So I feel like I did really good with guys that can trip you up on that one. So the most obvious guy that can trip you up this week is, of course, Mito Pereira. It's just so hard to see him being motivated this week. What a disaster in 18. He has 5 really good finishes in a row. I don't see him being 100% focused. It was really cool to see Joaquin Neiman and a few other guys, but we've seen this before. That was such a grind for Pereira, and then the mental letdown. This is just going to be a tough tournament, so he was going to be fade material for me. Another guy that's I think can trip people up. This is another big name guy that's not playing very good. This is Victor Hovland. Fading him again. His last 3 tournaments, he's not been up to his standards. 41st, 27th, 33rd in his last 3 standard golf tournaments. Since mid-March, he's 40th in strokes gained in this field, and he's minus 0.49 around the green. So you mentioned these greens can be hard to hit. He's not. He's terrible if he doesn't hit the green. So in a field that's a little bit watered down, and you're 40th in stroke gained, I think he's massively overpriced. I'm not going to have Victor Hovland anywhere near any of my seasonal or daily lineups. And then finally, I'm going to fade Jason Kokrak, defending champ. I'm just not seeing stats in great form right now for the defending. 60th last week. He has 1 top 15 finish in his last 10 tournaments. He's 109th tee to green, 96th in approach, 126th in greens and regulation. Kokrak is a guy that can come out of nowhere. Actually, if you look at some of his wins, he's just popped out in bad form, and all of a sudden there he is winning. But if I'm looking at some of these stats, he's just not near the top of anything that leads me to believe he's going to be in contention. And I think a lot of people are going to look at that and go, oh, Kokrak, wow, he won last year. Wouldn't surprise me if he was not in the top 20, even this watered down field. So Mito Pereira, Victor Hovland, Jason Kokrak, those are guys who can trip you up this week.
Kudos, shout out real quick to the graphics team as you're getting ready to go over those players. I'm looking at those images and I'm like trying to guess who it is, but I got none of them. But they fit right in beautifully once they come up there. I'm like, oh yeah, okay. So kudos on those images. That's very, very cool. And Andy, I do want to say thank you for not trolling me about Patrick Cantley all week, because he was awful from first tee on Thursday.
So
We disagreed on last week's show, and I'll admit when I was dead wrong, and I was, and you were right on the money as far with all those guys. And I feel good that this week I don't have any of those three on my radar. So at least I can sleep happy knowing I'm not going against Andy in that regard this week. I'll go back to another outright I'm looking at for this week. And one thing I like to do is take guys the week after that's all that's being talked about. And that was Jordan Spieth. Jordan Spieth was one of two guys that was being, if he doesn't win, it's the craziest thing in the world. Last week, everybody was on Jordan Spieth. And obviously he did not show up. He was not in contention. He did finish tied for 34th. So it's not like he played poorly, but he was never, in contention at all anytime throughout the week. A lot of pressure was on him because of that lead up, I guess, he had going into that event. But I'll take him this week. I think there's less people excited about him this week after that tournament. And I'm not thrilled about his price. It's 14-1, but I understand why it is where it is. To me, Spieth is one of the biggest epitomes of horse for the course players. I mean, there are certain places where the guy, no matter what kind of funk he is, which we know he was in that bad spot for a couple of years with his swing, but I mean, he still shows up at places like Augusta, Pebble Beach, TPC Deer Run. He doesn't play that every year, but when he does, he wins. And then anywhere in Texas, the Valero, the Byron Nelson, and this week at the Colonial. He's made the cut in all 9 tournaments he has played here, including a win and 3 runner-ups. His worst finish was a tie for 32nd in 2019, and that was, right in the thick of him playing like crap. But he's finished no worse than 14 in his other 8 starts here. So, again, horse for the course play, and I like the fact that I'm sure people are talking about him this week, but they're not talking about him like they were last week. He does tend to struggle with his driver accuracy. At least that was the knock on him for a while, but he has been much better of late, as he's plus 0.67 strokes gained off the tee over the last 3 months. He is accurate with his iron zone, number 24 in greens and regulation. So, again, I think this is just a great bounce-back spot for Spieth. I know it's a course he loves, and I'm just hoping that this week, with a little less attention around him, that it'll work out quite in our favor. So Jordan Spieth, 14-1 on the outright market is my other outright for this week. Andy, let's go back to you. Draftkings darlings. Always love this segment of yours. Who are you putting in your lineup that are inexpensive this week?
Well, we were 1-1 last week, and what was frustrating was my best lineup. All my DraftKings darlings made the cut, and the one guy who missed the cut was Scotty effing Scheffler, the most expensive guy. And I worked a lineup so I could have Scheffler in there, and he was the one that tanked the lineup. Unbelievable. So in the client pack, I put a stars and scrubs and did really good. So honestly, if you took both the DraftKings lineups, you came out ahead. We did really good. So, all right, let's take a look at some inexpensive guys. I'm going to start with Troy Merritt at 7,300. This guy has 7 made cuts in a row, and he only has 2 missed cuts in his last 14 tournaments. We talked about horse for a course. Nick, you did for Scheffler. This guy finished 7th here last year. So give me Troy Merritt at 7,300. I'm going to start my lineup with him. My boy, CT Pan, continues to be disrespected by DraftKings. It's 7,500. You take out the players where he got the bad weather draw, and he has 7 made cuts in a row, and he finished 32nd here last year. So not a great field. Pan should easily make the cut, get you a lot of points on the weekend. So I got Merritt, I got CT Pan, and then I'm going to go with the richest golfer on tour. Did you know this, Nick? The richest golfer on tour is not Tiger Woods. It is actually Maverick McNeely at 7,500. He barely made the cut last week. He was terrible on the weekend. But that is, if you take out the Zurich, Nick, that is 15 made cuts in a row for Maverick McNeely. 15! Wow. Justin Thomas is the only one with more in a row if you take out the Zurich. So my final lineup, I'm going to start with Troy Merritt, CT Pan, and Maverick McNeely. And then, I bet against him one tournament, and we won, and I feel lucky because he's been really good. I'm going to put Davis Riley. I can't ignore some of these finishes that he's had. I'm going to put Davis Riley in. I'm also going to add, I just can't quit Tommy Fleetwood. He had a top 5 finish. I'll put Tommy Fleetwood in, and then I'm going to put Jordan Spieth. I can't ignore his history here. So, so those are my DraftKings darlings for this week.
That is definitely a good group. I already said kudos to the graphics team again, but you as a standard bearer posting those DraftKings darlings is just a fantastic image to look at. I mean, look at that.
Look at that. Nice.
Oh, good. Doesn't get any better. Doesn't get any better.
Did you know that about Maverick McNeely? That he's the richest.
What do you mean by richest? Like, has he got wealthy parents or something? What do you mean?
Yeah, his dad started a huge tech company. I believe it's Steve McNeely, and he has $800 million coming to him. But what's funny about it, I read this article. It is a fantastic article. When he graduated college, he moved back with his parents in this like 42,000 square foot home, and they charged him rent. they were like, "There's no free rides, buddy."
It's just like when you're done college and you go back home for those next 4 years. You got to pay something, man. You got to pay your way.
You
probably ate a lot of groceries.
Yeah, so it was a great article. I came away reading the article really liking Maverick McNeely. He puts in a ton of time and effort and work. And it's really funny seeing the richest golfer on tour is not Tiger Woods. It is Maverick McNeely.
I did not know that. I appreciate the I call it useless knowledge because I always love trivia knowledge later, and that will
completely
be one
useless.
I will use. I don't know how I will use it in my handicapping going forward, but I definitely will put that in my back pocket for a future date. Let's get into our best bets for the week. I will go first with Brian Harman, top 40, currently priced at minus 140 at DraftKings. Harman loves Colonial. He's also having a solid season to boot. He missed the cut here in his very first start in 2012, but since he's a perfect 8 for 8, with his worst finish being a tie for 31st, including 6 top 25s and 3 top 10s. Proving he likes these types of tracks, last week he finished tied for 34th at the very similar Southern Hills. He's very accurate off the tee, ranks 11th in driving accuracy this season, while also ranking 25th in proximity to the hole. He ranks just outside the top 10 in total strokes gained over the last 6 months coming in, so he didn't make that first graphic we showed, but he's number 15th in that category. So I'll leave him off my outright card this week, but he's positive in all 5 measured categories, and the confidence here should only boost that. So I do think he'll have a good week, and I think he'll be inside that top 40 this week. So Brian Harman, top 40, minus 140 is my best bet of the week. Andy, back to you. What are you liking for your best bet this week?
Just to piggyback off that, I love the Brian Harman pick, and I also love that you went top 40. The quality of golfer falls off a cliff. You're going to get some really good prices on top 40s. I was looking at several guys, as well. I mean, looking at Davis Riley, you can probably get him at a good one. Harold Varner. So, and Harman was one that I had my eye on. So I'm glad to hear you mention it. My best bet, or just going to fade a guy who probably celebrated more than one night this week, and that is Justin Thomas. So I'm going to take Jordan Spieth over Justin Thomas, coming off an incredible PGA Championship. Both guys grinded it out, but so I'm going to go over the last 3 wins for Justin Thomas and what happened after. So 2021, that season, he won the Players, and he was awful at the match play, didn't even come out of his group. 2020, he won the Tourney of Champions. He missed the cut the very next week. And then he also won the FedEx St. Jude, and he finished 37th the next week. Jordan Spieth, as you mentioned, 2nd, 10th, 8th. Those are his last 3 finishes here. So it's just a classic letdown spot for a guy who wins a tournament, let alone a PGA Championship. So going to be fading Justin Thomas and Mito Pereira, and to get Jordan Spieth at such good odds against Justin Thomas, that makes my card for best bet of the week.
I love that play. I'm obviously big on Jordan Spieth. I mentioned him as an outright play this week. And JT, you're right. I mean, I think he's a guy that gets very high on those wins and, probably gets a little unfocused right after that. I don't know if you saw that meme floating around where he was on the phone right after the win. It was like, Mom, I won. But he was like, he was calling Tiger Woods. I don't really know if that was true or not, but it was hilarious. He's on the phone with Tiger. Mom, I won. So I am with you on that bet, and I wish you best of luck there. Any last takeaways for this week? Any last little comments for the viewers for Colonial?
No, just expect some really good stacked fields and take a look. I think top 40 and the make and the missed cuts are going to be fantastic odds. I mean, when you get these watered down fields, you can get really good odds on guys to make the cut that, you know, in stacked fields normally wouldn't get it. So Ricky Fowler's a guy that's making cuts. You can get some good odds on that. So when you have a big drop off, take a look at these top 40s and make and miss the cuts. There's a lot of value in those.
Yeah, I totally agree. Good info from Andy Lang, as always. Let's wrap it up with our promo code one more time. We have Colonial 20 for this week's show. Take $20 off Andy or myself's tournament pack. Normally priced at $39. Get it for just $19. That's all 4 days of coverage. So head over to WagerTalk.com to check that out. Andy, we will be back again next week. We have the Memorial Jacks tournament. So always a great field, always a great tournament there. So looking forward to that. And that's it. That's the show. Appreciate you guys tuning in. Smash that like button for us. As always, Andy, cashes those checks on the like buttons. He needs that to get paid, so we want to help him out as much as possible. Andy, on behalf of Andy Lang, myself, and WagerTalk.com, thanks guys for tuning in. We'll see you next week at the Memorial.
Stop. Don't buy that picks package or all access. Wait, what? Yep. Don't click add to cart until you check out our new deals page at both WagerTalk and Sports Memo, where you can find all the latest offers, promotions, and coupons available all in one place. These deals are updated daily and can be found by clicking deals in the nav at WagerTalk or Sports Memo, going to wt.buzz/deals, or scanning the QR code on your screen.